In the chronicles of human wickedness, few figures stir such raw terror as Caligula, the Roman emperor who turned the greatest empire the world had known into his private theater of slaughter, depravity, and god-madness. What you are about to hear is not simply the biography of an insane ruler, it is a grim dissection of how unlimited power can rot the soul completely, twisting a once promising youth into a beast whose savagery would make even veteran torturers flinch. This is the banned history Rome fought desperately to bury, a story so black that ancient writers spoke of it only in whispers, afraid that merely uttering his name might call his spirit back to stalk the living. The year was 37 AD when Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, forever remembered as Caligula, took the imperial throne at the tender age of 24. An empire forged by iron legions and the cold, calculated violence of its founders was now handed to a boy king for 4 short years that would rewrite the meaning of tyranny itself. What started as the joyful reign of a cherished prince descended into a frenzy of bloodshed so grotesque it stunned a society already hardened to crucifixion and arena death. Our sources for this nightmare are the greatest historians of the ancient world, Suetonius, whose Lives of the 12 Caesars delivers intimate, stomach-turning details of Caligula's excesses, Tacitus, the unrivaled chronicler of imperial rot, and Cassius, who preserved eyewitness testimony from those who lived through the horror. These men wrote at mortal risk, convinced that posterity must learn how fast civilization can collapse beneath one unchecked madman. To grasp the full depth of Caligula's evil, we must first look at the poisoned ground that nurtured this deadly bloom. He was born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, a world where assassination was politics and politics was a fight to stay breathing. His great-grandfather Augustus had founded the empire through genius and calculated murder. His grandfather Tiberius governed by fear and suspicion. His father Germanicus, adored by the legions, likely died by poison because of that very popularity. The nickname, Caligula, Little Boot, came from childhood days spent in army camps on the German frontier, where soldiers loved the tiny boy dressed in miniature military kit marching beside scarred veterans. That early immersion in camp life and Roman war's casual brutality would later feed his obsession with gladiators and executions. The charming child who melted hardened legionaries grew into a man who felt real joy watching people suffer. His road to the throne was littered with the corpses of his own family. In his last paranoid years, Tiberius wiped out anyone who might challenge his succession. Caligula's mother, Agrippina the Elder, was exiled and starved. His brothers Nero and Drusus were jailed and murdered. Only Caligula's youth, apparent harmlessness, and reputation as a frivolous play actor spared him. Tiberius is said to have growled that he was raising a viper for the Roman people, a prophecy that proved all too true. When Tiberius died in 37 AD, smothered by Caligula himself, some whispered, the 24-year-old inherited a realm stretching from Britain to Egypt, Spain to Syria. The Senate, worn out by Tiberius's terror, greeted the new emperor with real joy. They had no idea they were merely swapping one monster for a far hungrier one. Caligula's first months looked like the dawn of a golden age. He paid huge bonuses to the Praetorian Guard, the city troops, and even the fire brigades, buying loyalty with his predecessor's hoarded gold. He recalled exiles, freed prisoners, and published the imperial accounts, gestures that made him wildly popular with senators and street crowds alike. Rome, desperate for light after Tiberius's long night, practically worshipped their handsome, generous young prince. He staged colossal gladiatorial shows and chariot races, pouring money into spectacles that left the masses roaring. Arenas flowed with blood as rare beasts were butchered and top gladiators fought from sunrise to sunset. Caligula watched it all with a beaming smile, his laughter ringing out long after the crowd fell silent. What people saw as open-handed entertainment was really the first hint of his sick love for violence. In those early days he finished Tiberius's building projects, started new ones that gave work to thousands, restored Pompey's theater, and erected a brand new amphitheater, monuments that hid the darkness growing inside him. Foreign envoys reported a sharp, eloquent young ruler handling diplomacy with surprising skill. Yet even then, keen eyes caught disturbing signs. His arena laughter was too loud, too long. His gaze lingered on blood soaking into the sand. Palace slaves whispered that sometimes, after the crowds left, he would slip back into the empty amphitheater and walk alone among the corridors still smelling of death. The seeds were sprouting, watered by the strongest wine known to men, absolute power. 8 months in, Caligula collapsed with a mysterious, near-fatal illness that marked the moment the promising emperor died and the monster was born. Ancient accounts describe symptoms modern doctors have guessed might be encephalitis, thyroid storm, or temporal lobe epilepsy. Debate still rages. What is beyond dispute is that the man who rose from that sickbed was no longer fully human. Suetonius says the Roman people loved him so much they held candlelit vigils outside the palace, some even offered their own lives to the gods if he recovered. The gods must have laughed. They answered the first prayer, and guaranteed the second would soon follow. When he finally stood again, courtiers noticed the change at once. His voice had turned harsh and grating. His eyes bored straight through people. He began claiming private conversations with Jupiter and visions no mortal could see. Those divine messages would soon justify every atrocity and his demand to be worshipped as a god. The illness unlocked a bottomless hunger for cruelty. Before, he had shown the usual aristocratic indifference to pain. After, he hunted chances to inflict it. He spent hours inventing ingenious torments, taking as much pleasure in designing suffering as in watching it carried out. The first unmistakable crack appeared in his treatment of those closest to him. He forced his favorite sister Drusilla to leave her husband and live openly as his wife. When she died in 38 AD, he declared her a goddess, denying it became a capital crime. For months he plunged the city into official mourning, no laughter, no bathing, no family dinners, on pain of death. Paranoia flared. A respected senator, Marcus Junius Silanus, killed himself after Caligula claimed the men had appeared menacing in a dream. From then on, anyone who haunted the emperor's sleep could expect Praetorians at dawn. His relations with the Senate collapsed into open sadism. He appeared before them dressed as Jupiter complete with fake beard and thunderbolt, as Neptune clutching a trident, even as Venus in wig and makeup. Senators had to crawl to him and kiss his foot before speaking. Hesitate, and you were marked. Their estates were seized to feed his spending. Dinner parties turned into Russian roulette. One moment he was charming and witty, the next he would point at a guest and order his execution for some imagined insult. Guests learned to laugh at every joke while quietly saying goodbye to life. His god complex exploded. Statues of himself replaced the heads of traditional gods in temples across the empire. Citizens had to sacrifice to his image, lukewarm devotion meant death. The court became a non-stop festival of sex and horror. He held orgies where senators and their wives were forced to perform while he judged their enthusiasm from a throne, deciding on the spot who lived. He summoned married women, raped them in front of their husbands, then returned to dinner to rate their bodies and technique aloud, daring the husbands to disagree. No boundary was sacred. He kept both male and female prostitutes but also systematically abused aristocratic boys and girls. His own sisters, beyond Drusilla, were fondled at banquets and later pimped out to favorites as proof that even the imperial family belonged to him. Banquets dissolved into pornographic theater. Old senators were made to strip and copulate with slaves while others ate. He turned rape into religious ritual, forcing victims to venerate his body as divine. Perhaps worst of all were the children. Sources say he assaulted noble daughters barely into puberty, then made their parents watch and thank him for the honor. He taxed everything, lawsuits, weddings, prostitutes, even silence during his speeches. When the treasury still ran dry, he revived treason trials, but now purely for cash. Wealth itself became criminal. His horse Incitatus was named consul and lived in marble luxury, a deliberate insult that said senators ranked lower than animals. He built a 3-mile pontoon bridge across the Bay of Naples just to ride over it wearing Alexander the Great's breastplate, proving he surpassed the ancients. The palace became a torture museum decorated with priceless art. He loved demonstrating each device, recounting past victims with a smile. Morning audiences were lotteries of life and death decided by the color of a toga or the pitch of a voice. He claimed different gods visited different beds, so his bedroom had several. Guards heard him arguing with invisible beings all night. Anyone who appeared in those conversations was dead by morning. Guests were served dishes he claimed were human flesh, real or not, the terror was the same. On campaign he ordered legions to collect seashells as spoils from the ocean, declared victory over Neptune, and made hardened soldiers parade the shells back to Rome. His planned invasion of Britain was abandoned because, he said, the sea god warned him off. He celebrated a triumph anyway. By 41 AD even the Praetorian Guard, once his bought enforcers, could take no more. Tribunes like Cassius, repeatedly humiliated by the emperor, organized a broad conspiracy of senators, knights, and freedmen united only by the need to survive. The final trigger, Caligula announced he would move to Alexandria to be worshipped without Roman restraint and planned to massacre the entire Senate. On January 24, 41 AD, during the Palatine Games, he took a shortcut through a narrow palace crypt. Chaerea and the others were waiting. The first sword slashed his jaw, 30 more followed. Suetonius says his last words were a stunned, "I'm still alive." A god-proven mortal. Chaos followed. The Senate dithered in panic. The guard found Caligula's uncle Claudius hiding behind a curtain and proclaimed him emperor almost by accident. Rome exhaled. Caligula was gone, but the damage lingered for generations. His reign exposed how fragile civilization is when all power rests in one pair of hands and those hands belong to a sadistic lunatic. Historians still argue over the precise illness or poison that flipped the switch, but the lesson is timeless: give one human absolute power without accountability, and the monster waiting inside any of us can be set free. The story of Caligula is not just ancient history. It is a permanent warning about what happens when law, tradition, and simple human courage fail to restrain those who rule. Wherever people hold power over others, and are answerable to no one, the ghost of Little Boot still walks.